So for context, on Rikers Island, I had this deck. It's an affirmation deck. So I never really brought full tarot into the space because while they really wanted it, I felt like there were some ethical concerns. So I used to just spread them out like a deck, and folks would just like pick a card, pull a card, and they resonated with every single card. Like after that, they were like, "Oh my god, she could tell the future," and I'm like, "No, but like this is what you pulled that card because you needed it." Like,
In the United States, approximately 40% of incarcerated persons are Black and Indigenous people of color. And while it may not be the majority, one is still too many. Now, what does that say about the spiritual practices and belief systems of the incarcerated? And does tarot have a space in there? As always, listen with an open mind and an open heart. And let us know what you think about this video by leaving a comment, subscribing, rating, or liking this video. And check out in the description where you can find Vidya and how you can also pour into her content and her mission as well. So without further ado, let's get into today's video.
yeah, so I grew up in a hyper religious household. So my family was Hindu from a high caste. So
Mhm.
from a young age, it was very heavily into the religious space. And I naturally rebelled from that because I didn't feel like that was really aligned. So I would say, like, spirituality, I was pretty disconnected from it for most of my life. But in 2020, during the COVID pandemic, I really stepped into working on Rikers Island with those that are incarcerated. And it really forced me to reckon with my spirituality because there were so many situations, things, people, places, coincidences that were not normal. And I felt like every time a situation happened, I was always protected. There was always a person that was protecting me, a group of people, just every time. And I'm like, okay, this isn't just random. Like, there's clearly something behind it. So it really forced me to just think about what does spirituality mean to me. Just because something like wasn't for me in terms of the religious aspect doesn't mean I have to shut away every piece of this. And so yeah, that's really where I think my spiritual journey really started. I think what we're in 2026 now, so 6 to 7 years later, I really utilize spirituality as just a way of being. It's a way of protection. It's a way of connecting to self. So yeah, I think a couple of those things really addresses that question.
That's great. And you said if I put all of those things into a hat and picked it out, I don't think I would have had this much complexity in one person and all of your experiences. And that Rikers Island,
Yeah.
the stories that come out of
Mhm.
that place specifically, I feel like anytime you hear of anybody going to that place, especially how it's set up, and there's a creator that I even saw that had recently come out of it, and it's like once you're out of it, that I don't want to say stench, but that's it's still on you when you leave, and how people
Yeah.
are able to identify you in your clothing. They know at that specific place, at that specific time, where you're coming from. And I feel like it does us a disservice to stop in those spaces by just reducing people down to the worst that's happened to them. And so
Yeah.
that's why I'm so passionate about not only this podcast, but this conversation. Because when
Yeah.
we're talking about spirituality, we have to also factor in the people that tend to get forgotten about. You know, how many times do we hear twice from somebody who's been incarcerated? Are you keeping up with them? Do you see how they're doing? And then when they're in, what background, what spiritual hope container do they have? You know, you often hear about things like Christianity, and especially in Islam, the nation of Islam. Those are some of the most popular religious practices that I hear of inside of those places. But what I find that kind of like misses, there's a little bit missing in it, is like that in between. And so it's like you had one way of believing, and you had a way of believing before you were in prison, but you're also moving towards another religion for the not just for the spiritual connection of it all, but also for a sense of community, because I can imagine it feels quite lonely in those spaces for sure. So bringing something like tarot into this, even having like talking about tarot inside of the prison system, it can be a little bit jarring because it's like, what does this have to do with that? But what we're going to end up talking about further into this episode is that there is a space for it, just like with any other spiritual practice, and not necessarily getting anyone to believe a certain way about anything, but
Yeah.
giving you the tools and showing you that there is a space for you in your own spiritual journey. It doesn't have to be so externally validating and seeking without having that grounded space to meet first. And so you mentioned your background in Hinduism. How did you transfer from that into tarot?
Yeah. I was just very much like a young person who was just like, I don't mess with none of this spiritual stuff and none of this religious stuff because I watched good things happen to bad people and bad things happening to good people. So to me, it was very much like, how can I believe in this if I believe in a better world, if I believe in
Mhm.
equity, if I believe in all of these things? So that was kind of like my turn off a little bit. And then it was really just like with tarot, it actually came out of like my own anxiety. So when I was a young adult, I would say like 21, 22, we all go through breakups, we all go through things, but for context, I have a Scorpio stellium. So very,
Mm,
very intense, like everything is intense and I can't survive and I don't know how to live. And tarot was just mentioned to me as I was kind of going through like astrology charts. And I
mhm,
really appreciated that because it was always like taught to me like, if it doesn't resonate, it doesn't resonate. But if it does resonate, maybe it'll help you, right? And so that was kind of how I got into tarot. I had heard there was people who said you can't ever buy your first tarot deck; you have to be gifted it. And I
mhm.
like then I had someone, and I was like, you know what? No, what? If my ancestors live within me, who's telling me I can't buy a tarot deck? I'm gonna go buy a tarot deck, and I bought a tarot deck,
Yeah.
and then I started reading for myself, and then and like it's been now 10 years since I picked up a tarot deck. I just used it first to like get an understanding of myself. But every time, you pull cards and like when I shuffle, like cards will fly out, right? Like messages will come out and always the message, I knew it. I might not have wanted to accept it, but there's never been a tarot reading that I've done for self that I'm like, this was completely off base. No,
Mhm,
I just wasn't fully like in tune or ready. So I think I looked at it as a tool. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like religion for me felt very forceful. If you're not this, then you're a bad person, or this
mhm.
is happening. And like, that's why that is the way it is. And tarot and spirituality felt like, do you like people's energy? Do you like the energy of self? What does this look like in practice? And it felt more open than something like religion.
That makes a lot of sense. And when you mention your anxiety that you had, that is what propelled you into your own
Mhm.
tarot practice. When we pull those cards, it's like a deeper look into your own psyche.
Yeah,
And so oftentimes people villainize tarot because it's like, who are you talking to? You're talking, yourself is coming through in those cards, if you aren't specifically channeling an energy that can work with you through tarot. But
yeah,
most times it's not just a deity outside of you, it's you talking to yourself.
yeah,
And if it is the former, there's room and space for both.
yeah,
Tarot is a very deeply personal practice. And I don't know if you've been watching social media, but there's a lot of discourse around tarot right now and how people end up leaving tarot and either going back to a faith that they had prior to or completely pivoting to a different path. And so, with this specific podcast of mine, and even in this episode, tarot is empowering you to see yourself.
yes,
And sometimes when we don't like what is being reflected back to us, can you sit in your are you able and willing to sit in your own mess?
yeah.
Tarot is not going to deceive you.
No, it's
If
not.
you want a
Yeah.
practice like tarot to reveal your truths about yourself, think about what you're asking about. And the thing where people find tarot meeting you dead in the square in the face in that way, sometimes religion doesn't give a space for that to happen. So you carry that with you outside of the religious space when it gets too uncomfortable. And even in these places, like in our own spiritual journeys, even if it isn't tarot, whatever the spiritual practice or religious practice that you have, and we have very two completely different backgrounds in that respect. But what is it teaching you about yourself? You know, like that feels like the overall arching message that tarot comes with. It's like, are you willing to sit with yourself in the muck of everything? And it doesn't always have to be that heavy.
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be a heavy thing. It's a tool that you use that is nothing more than an extension of yourself in that way.
Yeah. No, I
So
completely agree. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And as far as your own approach to tarot, you mentioned it being very a reflective practice for you. Do you see it in another light? Are you able to use it in another way, or is it deeply just a reflective practice for you?
I mean, it's both. I think it's a reflective practice, but it's also a connection tool, I feel. So, like, I've been doing tarot readings at parties over the past couple of years, which is kind of a non-traditional space to typically think of. But people have really wanted it, needed it, and loved it. And so,
Hmm.
like, I think it's also like I use tarot as like it is a reflection, but I say like it's a reflection of me, right? Like, why can't this be a normalized service? Why can't this be like part of the world? Because like when I first did like one of my first parties in Manhattan, I had a line out the door, and there were men who waited like over an hour in line, and like
Wow.
when they sat down, it was really more of like I've never heard of this. Like I want to just try it and see what it's like. And towards the end, it was just like you could just tell like space wasn't being made for them, right? In their own lives. And like for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, for 20 minutes, they got to
Hmm.
like just ask. Like I always say my tarot cards, they tell a story, right? So it's not about like a yes or a no, but like I'll pull out a million cards and we'll start to map out the energy around you and in your space and in your questions. And it was one of the only times where it's like, well, what do you want to know about? What's on your mind? Like what's frustrating you? And then putting those pieces together. So I would say I've mostly used it for personal use up until this point. But now I'm really looking at it as like a healing medium that should be
Hmm.
more accessible to so many people from different walks of life. Because at the end of the day, we all need more time connecting with ourselves.
Do you think it has a space in other spiritual practices as well?
Yeah, I mean, it depends, right? Because I think there's still a stigma around
Hmm.
tarot. So like I always try to like I know people have told me that it's in like not supposed to be done in context with or other religious affiliations and things like that. So I think there should, in my experience, it's like it should always be a part of everything, right? Like it's just a tool, it's an additive, but I also like always want to make sure everyone feels safe and comfortable. So I always say like yes,
Hmm.
and just like consent and asking for permission and like making sure no one feels like, because I feel like a lot of times people feel like if tarot's in the space, they can't do the other thing as well. Or everyone
Yeah.
has to do the tarot. It's like, no, if it doesn't work for you, if you don't believe in this, if this doesn't resonate, just don't do it. But it doesn't mean that we can't exist in the space, you know? Yeah.
I agree. I'm in the same space with you. I feel like tarot can run adjacent to or parallel to your religious and spiritual preferences, whatever those may be, but also keeping in mind the religious rules and making sure that, you know, if you're using this tool, to make sure that you're using it outside of without conflating it with your own religious practices if there is no space for it to be there. So it can, but from what you're saying, it's very individualistic in that way.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Definitely agree. And it's just such a complicated, I feel like, thing because it's all based on perception, right? Like
Hmm.
it's all based on like what does the one person need? Are you in a community that agrees with it or doesn't agree with it? So I always just like I like the idea of more access and
Hmm.
more spaces where people know what options are available to them. But I think like in the world we live in, we work in silos. This is
Yeah,
our group, this is our club, this is our thing, this is what we do. Yeah.
for sure. When it comes to how you've transitioned from your, if you're still doing them, when you've used your Hinduism in conjunction with tarot, did you find any parallels between the two?
So I actually have fully divested from Hinduism
Okay.
fully. So I would consider myself more agnostic in my practices. And so I never really brought them together. The only time I think that they were really prevalent is when I'm doing tarot readings for other folks from the same background. I
Hmm.
feel like that's like, because I have a mini copy of the Bhagavad Gita, so I use that sometimes in my tarot as a grounding, but I typically only use that when I feel like I need more connection with where I came from and my lineage, or when I'm doing a reading for someone who also comes from that lineage, if that makes sense.
Okay, so you're able to use that same background to help explain principles around whatever cards you're pulling for that person,
Yes.
but not
Yes.
necessarily like there's a space for both. But I think that in and of itself is why tarot is should be more accessible than it is, because these
Yeah.
archetypes aren't just something that were discovered whenever tarot cards were invented.
Mhm.
These are ancient practices. And I feel like when it comes to religion specifically, religion is the container through which we explain spiritual circumstances, spiritual experiences. And it's why, and even with those specific deities or gods of the practice, they look like the people that come from that same place. And
Yeah.
so tarot also adds in a way to mirror back to you how you can see your culture and your spiritual practices infused into these archetypes of these structures inside of tarot. They're not separate in that way. A lot
Yeah.
of what we experience in religious spaces are based off of these same archetypes that keep coming up over and over again. It's just in what ways are we able to make that relatable to the people who subscribe to a particular religion in a certain space?
Yeah, no, and I also frequently think about just like, we never get to be in the middle, right? We never get to have like balance, right? It's like it's either yes or no. And so I think with Hinduism, like the reason I've been so against some of it, right, is because of the casteism, of the violence, of everything that it promotes and the impacts it
Mhm.
has on so many people. However, like not all my ancestors were bad, right? Like not everyone was. So it's like I reject what the Bhagavad Gita stands for, right? And what it has like told people to do over generations that has caused harm. But I also recognize that there is ancestrally that like focus on these texts that we're actually on the right side of treating people well. So I think using that in my tarot has always been just an easy way to say, like, I don't have to fully reject everything. I can take the essence of what this should have been created to do and use it in my work and not feel like, oh, now I can't connect with this part of myself because this is the harm that's happened. Like, no, like I can just with boundaries and with rules and with the way that I want to engage with it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Do you feel that it's the religion itself and the text itself that influences human behavior, or do you feel like it's the human behavior that's influencing the way that the text explains religion?
I would say it's a good question. I would say both, but really, I do believe that, especially in Indian culture and casteism, like people are reading these texts like it is the directive, right? Like
Hmm.
even in my family, like I've watched people explain certain things to me. And I'm like, no, like you're just, this is what you've been taught. This is propaganda. This is not real. And so, like, while I do believe there's innate human behavior, I also like to believe more than anything that people want to treat other people with kindness and respect and love. And so it's like for an entire people to go and be castes, be continue to colonize people, to
Yeah.
go down that it's less than, it's not just like someone wants to cause this person harm. It's like you're being brainwashed to think that this is acceptable and in reference to your religion. Yeah.
I never considered that it wasn't just one religion that has turned
Mm,
into weaponizing the text instead of allowing it to be the container that helps to free people.
yeah.
So it sounds like more than just one specific religion in and of itself that I will not name. It
Hmm.
sounds like when people, when we don't have spaces that ground that practice and keep the spirit inside of the dogma, when we
Yeah.
don't save that space for both and we allow people to conflate their own meanings into such sacred spaces, I feel like that's where the disconnect happens. And it turns more into following what this person believes and
Yeah.
what this person says rather than reading and studying and really meditating on the words that have been left behind by people who saw it much differently.
Yeah, and I remember like growing up and my mom, she would say things to me and I would ask questions, right? Like, why do you think this? Why,
Hmm.
where did it say this, right? And I'll never forget because she kept being like, oh, well, I don't have those answers, but like you can come to class and ask those answers yourself. And I'd be like, no, because what are you doing? You're going to class to just hear the same information and you have no critical thinking around any of this. And like, you're not, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to go and ask the question. You should have the answer. If this is something that you believe, you should have asked these questions too. So like for me, it was just very much like it's the idea of like duty and obligation. It's this idea of like,
Hmm.
this is what the text told me to do. This is what I'm supposed to do. This makes sure that I am liberated and safe in my lifetime, where it's like, are you sure?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself is so important because I feel like that's what religion as a whole should empower people to do is to ask the questions.
Yeah.
Because there's only so much that you can, there's no way that you can possibly cover every single angle of your life and your human experience in one text.
Yeah.
Does your religious background and your spiritual practices or rituals, whatever that may be, does it allow room for that expansion? Or, and even in the practice of tarot, I don't know if I'll read tarot next year or the year after, but for right now, it is something that has really helped me in being able to understand myself while creating and saving space to ask further questions.
Yeah.
Because if the blueprint has already been written, what is the point in us even being here to begin with? If
Yeah.
we had it so right at one point in time,
Exactly. Mhm.
if it was perfect,
Mhm.
then what is the point in us continuing to do this thing we call life?
Yep.
For
Definitely.
sure. And so when we transition that idea, that way of being into tarot, what do you think that says about where we are as a collective and its rise in popularity right now?
Oh man, like I think there's so many sides to this, right? I've met so many people who one like are using tarot as a coping mechanism to their life. Like, no, 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 we don't do that. that's not good. Right? Like it's just always a question, always an answer, always this. And it's like that's not really how this is supposed to be like used. This isn't a band-aid. This is like a helping you like see the truth. So I think we really see that side of it. And I also think we see so much exploitation through
Yeah.
tarot,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like, and I think at its core is like people want to feel safe and loved and happy and in control of their lives. And
Hmm.
like tarot can either make that happen or make it worse. And I think more than often not, we're seeing people just use it as a tool without understanding where it comes from. Where does the respect come from? Like I remember doing a tarot reading at like a birthday party.
Hmm.
And I was set up and like I remember this woman, she had come to me and I guess she had like done a little bit of tarot in her life. And I was explaining to her like my cards tell stories, right? So they might fly out. Like they're just gonna keep flying out and like you're just gonna have to listen to me and I'm channeling like what you need to know. And like she couldn't, she kept asking me, what is the definition of this card? What is the definition of this card? What is the definition of this card? And I was just like, but that's not how it works for me. Like every tarot reader is different. Everyone is channeling their own ancestry, their own lineage, their own everything. I was like, my ancestors will never tell you what this card means and what that card means. It's 4 to 10 cards at a time flying out. And I know what to say. I know what the answer is. So I think it's also that moving away from this traditional like one card reading or let's
Yeah.
answer the question or let's be definitive. It's like no, like it's a tarot is a movement, tarot is a practice, tarot is like the way that you are, like it's all of these things. So like you might read tarot completely different than me, but then we're different readers for a reason. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I think that fits in perfectly with what we were discussing in regards to these containers allowing room for expansion and not just being so rigid in its thought. A card, we can pull the chariot one day, and even though the structure and the base and the bones of that card is one thing, it doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't room for more insight into what that card means. And that insight for that particular reading and for that particular person is individual for that person. The card itself is just this is the opening of the energy and what we're really looking into. But the spiritual component of it is going deeper into how that particular archetype fits into this circumstance and the situation. It doesn't necessarily always mean that what spirit prescribes for that person through this card is going to be the very rigid, hard stone fact of it being able to be translated into another circumstance in the same way.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
And so with any spiritual practice, again, we're not telling you what to believe here, but it opens tarot has this ability to open ourselves up to explore deeper meanings into these cards as it relates to our own individual practices. Spirituality is very, very, very personal.
Mm-hmm.
It's religion that is more so focused on the external.
Yeah.
And so when people come to you in that way and they say, okay, well, what does this card mean? Or what does this card mean? And look for the reading to just be tailored simply to the meanings of the cards. Sure, we can do that, but how is that helping you? How
Yeah.
is that applying to the situation you're inquiring about? What does it
Exactly.
mean to move? What does it mean to be still? What does it mean to fight for yourself? What does it mean to draw back? What does it mean to pour into other people?
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing here is also trust. Like, you need to be able
Hmm.
to trust your reader. You need to be able to trust that what I'm saying is coming from somewhere, right? So, like, even after her reading, I remember being like, that's I'm not the tarot reader for her because, like, I don't do that. That's just not how I channel energy. That's just not how I do my practice. And so, if that's what you're looking for, like, find a reader that can operate under that wavelength. But that's just not me. And so I feel like I always think a lot about like white supremacy and like it really white supremacy like thrives around perfectionism and knowing the answer and all of these things. And it's like just trust. Like
Hmm.
you're here, just like live and like be part of the moment. like receive this. And I think that is very difficult for people.
Oh, yeah. Because I don't think we were taught to do that.
Yeah.
And I see that translating not only in the spiritual space, but also in school,
Yeah.
in any type of whatever that teaches us and job training. It teaches us even in the military. With my military background, they
Well, you were
always
in the
tell you
military.
that,
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Okay.
even with that background, everybody always tells you that in order to fit into this mold, to be what this organization needs you to be, there's a part of you that has to die. There's a part of you and your way of being, and that cannot carry you into this space. And so when we think of things like that and the scope of tarot reading in general, if you're not ready for those types of conversations, then all that you can get out of your spiritual practice is where you allowing yourself to meet it.
Yeah.
And so when I think of how systemically we have not had the opportunity to flourish and grow and think for ourselves, that also translates over to the prison system. They tell you when to wake up. They tell you when to eat. They tell you when to go to bed. They tell you how to think. They tell you when you can worship. They tell you when you can go outside. Everything is so, I have no autonomy anymore. All of my autonomy is gone. And
Yes.
when you're surrounded in systems that institutionalize you to the point where you no longer have your own way of thinking and being, that your whole life is dedicated to contributing to something that doesn't always necessarily pour back into you, that also meets us in our spiritual practices.
Yes.
And so when we consider tarot for the incarcerated, how do you think that we can make a space for that to fit for that population?
Yeah, it's so funny you had also just mentioned your military background because just a week or two ago, I have become friends with someone who had just
Mhm.
served 17 years and he had gone in when he was 20. He's now retired and he's just kind of we're in similar places in life. And so as we're connecting, I've been like, we're the same person. Like it's the same system that we're talking about. Like I understand why you're thinking like that because I'm also conditioned to think like that just for less time than you. And so I think that was just so crazy to me. So like this feels very like I
Yeah,
believe there's no such thing as coincidences, but it's like,
not
oh
at
wow, we
all.
were just talking about this. But I think with that spirituality and tarot, it gives you permission, right? I think it's two
Mm,
things. The systems never give us permission to be who we are. It's always like you got to work, you got to do this, you got to rise rank, you got to whatever that thing looks like for you within that system. We don't get permission to like not just think but be, like
mhm.
what does it look like to not have to always produce, always have to work, always have
Yes.
to do all of that. So I think that's one thing. And the second thing I'm very passionate about saying is that when you're a part of these systems, whether you work there, whether you're incarcerated, whether you're just impacted by these systems, like they strip you of your imagination, like they don't allow you to just really dream fully because you're constantly thinking about what does dreaming look like in this space. Of course it can't exist because I'm doing this. And so like I feel like for me the biggest shift is like, yeah, like dream, pull a card, figure out what you're feeling like I think that is one of the most important things of how to use this. Because so for context, on Rikers Island, I had this deck. It's an affirmation deck. So I never really brought full tarot into the space because while they really wanted it, I felt like there were some ethical concerns with
Hmm.
fully trying to do that because I didn't think that they were fully ready and they were all facing long periods of sentencing. So I just didn't feel like that was my place, but I felt like the affirmation cards could be somewhat of a channel. So I used to just spread them out like a deck, and folks would just like pick a card, pull a card, and they resonated with every single card. Like after that, they were like, "Oh my god, she could tell the future," and I'm like, "No, but like this is what you pulled that card because you needed it. Like you know
Exactly.
what you needed, and you know like what was important to you at that time. So just take the message for what it is." And so I think like we have this obsession. I think like white supremacy culture also forces us on us, where it's like you have to have like the way to do it, right? And it's like the
Hmm.
way to do it is different. It's like our ancestors weren't sitting around talking about agendas and bullet points, and no, they just went to a party and maybe they pulled some cards and they sat in a circle and they had community and conversation. They allowed the space to transform into
Hmm.
whatever it is. And I think that like the systems that we come from, if there is a space for us to just be, that holds so much more power than one I think can even imagine. Yeah.
You hit on two things that I think is important and something that I also didn't think about. Even while you laid the cards out on the table, you told them to come and pick their own card.
Mhm.
That in and of itself, I feel like breaks something.
Yeah.
You didn't give them the card.
Mm-mm.
They chose it on their own. And they just so happened to find out that that card gave them the medicine it is that they needed for what they were experiencing at that point in time. That can be scary. That can be scary for people who have never known freedom in that sense. And so when you're in a place that is so gray and hard and you're always looking over your back and whatever else the case may be, I find that bringing forth that sense of choice brings a little bit of color and life back into these people. And
And I,
so,
yeah,
yeah, go
yeah, no,
ahead.
and I think it's like the autonomy piece that is like so missing, right? Like, I think we're like, I always say, like, you can't have it all. Why can't you have it all? Like, why
Hmm.
can't your life just be like what you want it to be? And I think like so many times we've given our independence up to a system, an institution, a work, a marriage, or whatever the case is. And it's like you can actually say, like, I want my life to look like this, and this is
Hmm.
okay. And I think tarot and spirituality gives you permission to be able to say something like that. Like, it doesn't mean you have to change your life overnight. It just means you have to be more open to dictating your own world.
I agree. And I find that if where you are at in your spiritual journey leads you to a certain spiritual path, religion, whatever the case may be, I feel like the piece that's missing is we've been so indoctrinated to always look outside of ourselves for our own guidance, for answers, that we miss that piece whenever we transition over into a new practice and think that it's just the where you believe what you believed in personally is the root of the issue, and it's not often is it ever the entire scope of the picture. And so
Yeah.
when you give people this sense of freedom that allows them to choose their own based off of what they're already experiencing in the midst and in the middle of that, it really does unlock something for them. And then another thing that you brought up earlier was when you mentioned not only how those buildings and institutions affect the incarcerated, but also the people who work there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, totally. And it's just like we like to separate like good versus bad. And like that just doesn't exist.
Mm.
Like, right? Like you can be an officer for over 25 years, but at the end of the day, you're working 15 to 20-hour shifts, 5, 6 days a week. You're going to jail every day. Say what you want, but you going to jail. Same thing with the military. Same thing with like all of these spaces. They just like it's not different, right? Like maybe the way we react to it, maybe our power structure, maybe some of that is different, but the system affects all of us separately but also together. We're all here. Yeah.
That's huge because
Yeah.
even though you don't sleep there, if you're talking about 15 and 20-hour shifts, some of that is coming with you when you leave.
100%.
And so, what ways do you take care of yourself?
Yeah, it's a hard question, right? Because I'm not going to give you the typical answer of like self-care, right? Because it looks so hard. It's so difficult. I think one of the things that has helped me the most is being around people who have also been impacted in the same way, right?
Mm.
So like I've really enjoyed meeting this person over the past couple weeks because for once I'm like, oh my God, my brain is not just my brain. My brain is also your brain. So like we're always thinking similarly, and just that level of community and camaraderie to
Mm-hmm.
is like, okay, I'm not crazy. Like you saw that person run by, like okay, so did I. I
Oh
think
yeah.
that is like one of the biggest things. But I also think figuring out what like joy looks like for you, right? Like, is it traveling? Is it laughing? I love to like go on solo travel trips and like reinvent myself for a week, right? Because it's like you don't know who I am. So I am whoever I want to be for the next 7 days. And that makes me feel like very joyful. Being around people that are different from me brings me joy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just finding the thing that like makes you feel like, okay, even after everything is said and done, we can't discount the harm, the violence, the everything. But like, are you good? And what is it going to take for you to say, yeah, I'm good? You know what? Yeah, I went through a lot of stuff. Yeah, it was 20 years. Yeah, it was this, but I'm okay. I'm okay. I have friends. I have place my favorite place to drink beer. I have community. I have someone I can call. I think if you give yourself those things,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of falls into place.
Oh yeah, because I can imagine, I think where I ended up having some mental challenges in the military was I would work
Yeah.
all day long, and go home and sulk and rot. I
Mm.
wouldn't do anything. I didn't feel like doing anything. I was exhausted. I was tired. My phone's always attached at my hip because in that
Of course.
supervisor position, somebody
Right.
always needs me.
Yeah.
My time is never really mine.
No, never.
And there's a portion of me that's always back in the barracks, back on the ship, back on the put wherever, right?
Yeah.
Finding that the moments of joy that allow you to completely take that off so
Yeah.
that it does not skew the way that you view your own reality, nor does it affect your experiences with other people.
Yeah. And it's like, I was just telling my friend, like, don't plan. Don't plan
Mm,
how you're going to show up. Just show up.
hmm.
Like, just me? Like, yes, just you. If you're hungover, if you're whatever, just be you, because that's like how you make the authentic connections. That's how like the people actually like you're like, okay, I actually like would like to go to happy hour. I actually like
Yeah,
wouldn't mind getting dinner. But like if you're planning everything, if you're trying to prepare, it's not really you, it's another version of you, which works for a certain situation and place. But what does it look like for you to just be you and show up?
yeah.
Yeah,
And creating the space for that to happen.
exactly. Exactly. No, 100%. And I think it's like it's all within, I think control also comes up a lot, right? Like we've been taught like the like safety, our versions of safety is like control. You know what I mean? Like when
Hmm.
we can control something, we're like, okay, we feel safe. But like actual real safety is not controlling anything and still feeling safe. So how do we get there?
Oh, yeah,
That's the challenge. Yeah.
absolutely. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So back to the tarot piece in this space.
Yeah.
And me as the optimistic, jolly green giant, I'm always seeing the bright side of everything. Do you
Yeah.
think it would work? Do you feel like there would be a chance that if we had this social advocate that would introduce a practice like tarot, even if it's not the cards, but adding those books into their library so they can study and learn, or even bringing forth spiritual practitioners into these spaces to teach you that even though you're structured in this way, and even though a lot of your freedom is gone, there's still a portion of you that has control over your own spiritual experience. Do you feel like we would ever get there?
100%, 100%. Because one, in my life, I feel like I'm always talking to people about like, what's your chart? Like, what's this? What's that? And like, even with the friend I had just mentioned with the military background, right?
Hmm.
Like, I'm like going through his chart and I'm just like, well, typically people with these placements, like, this is what I've seen, right? Like, this is just the pattern. Every 2 seconds, he looking at me
Yeah.
like, what? Wait. That was kind of accurate. Okay, hold on. And so it's like people believe when you actually give them something to believe in, right? So it's like when people are just like on,
Mm,
like in these spaces, in these systems, and like, yeah, people doubted me all the time with these affirmation cards, but you better believe in a month, every single person that was incarcerated in that housing unit was coming to me for a card. So it's
oh
like,
yeah.
it works. It's just more of, I feel like it's always like get in where you fit in, right? So like get in however you can, talk to
Mhm.
people, and then just be like, oh, you want to do this? Oh, you want to do this, right? Like it's almost this idea of like exposure. Like what can you expose people to? And leave the choice up to them. Don't pressure them. If they're like, no, we don't do this, don't do it. It's okay. But if this is something that interests you, like I'm here, like I think it can definitely work. And I've just seen people be some of the most like skeptical
Mhm.
people just be like, you know what? This actually is resonating in multiple places in my life. So,
Yeah.
like, let me look at this. Let me be open. Let me be coached, you know? Yeah.
That's so important in what you're doing in that space because it's not the video show. It's not look what I can do. It's
No.
look
Look
at
at
who
what
you
you can
are.
do. Yeah, exactly.
That's
Mhm.
what brings people in.
Yeah.
That's what makes people stay. That's what perks their ears up because maybe for the first time in their life, and I'm even getting emotional like thinking about
Yeah.
it, you know?
Yeah. You can be emotional. It's okay. Yeah. It's very difficult, and there's not always a language for it
Yes. There's
at
not always
first.
a language, and oftentimes when I think of those communities, I think
Yeah.
about how they've always had to sacrifice part of themselves, you
Yes.
know? And not everybody who's been incarcerated are the worst of the worst.
No. Yeah,
There's people with
exactly.
34 felonies in the highest office right now.
Yeah. And then it like it goes to also like the system, right? It's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh, like, like every cop sucks, every cop is good. It doesn't actually even matter. The system is doing what it does to a good cop or a bad cop, right? So instead of being mad at the individual person, let's look at what conditions the system is creating and for
Mm,
who, and then give them
mm,
permission to do things a little bit differently. Like, I have to be this on. You could like
yes.
take a nap. Like we don't feel like we can, but what is it, where is that space, where can we get in, where can
Hmm.
we start shifting that narrative? Because also if we're looking at people in any type of like carceral system or military system, like the suicide and death rate is so
Mm,
high after they serve their do their service, or even like in another world serve your time, right? Like what does that look like, right? And there's a reason
yeah.
that this is happening, is because it's designed, like the system is designed to do this. So I think like more spaces where we can be like, the system is designed to do this, but guess what we need? We're
Hmm.
gonna do this instead. Doesn't mean the system can't exist. Doesn't mean the rules and the expectations can't still exist. But let's be a little bit flexible. Let's start creating this new world that we're talking so much about. Yeah.
I agree. And I feel that if we pour more into those who find themselves in those unfortunate circumstances through a very rooted and grounded spiritual practice, whether it's tarot or whatever the case may be,
Yeah.
I find that when you equip people with the tools to be able to see themselves mirrored back to them, if
Yeah.
you just give them the opportunity and the chance, I feel that the reoffending rates wouldn't be as high as they are.
Of course. Of course. Absolutely.
Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that we don't have an overarching system to deal with in the process, but when you find those people at their absolute lowest points, and you mentioned even the suicide rates, there's nothing to hope for anymore. And I
Yeah.
find that spirituality should be that place that gives you hope.
Yeah.
And so a practice that is so deeply personal, like tarot, even if you don't have cards, like I can imagine having a book that explains the meanings of the cards, and then you pick a number out of your head, say 52, and whatever is on page 52 is your message. It can
Yeah,
be that simple.
I actually used to do that with a certain religious texts and stuff like that. Whereas
Hmm.
anything, you just scroll, like hold the book in your hand, right? Hold the book in your hand, go through the pages, do maybe a meditation, like breathe deeply, think about your question, visualize what you need, and open to a page and see what advice that gives you. That advice has always been super accurate because it's your energy that you're channeling. You don't need my energy, you need your own energy. You know, other people's energy can help in moments of like, I can't get through the fog. Like
Hmm.
what am I feeling? I don't know. Like I have astrologers, I have tarot readers, I have a whole team of people that I'll call in crisis, like help me.
Yeah,
But we should be developing that skill set to do it for ourselves.
I agree 1,000%. And when I think about this integration, I wonder about the staff being equipped with these tools also. But
Yeah.
then I think about how much you guys already have to deal with,
Mm.
how much more is being asked of you, because not every person who's in staff that works there is a spiritual person.
Yeah, but I also think I look at it as just a tool, right? So I
Mhm.
think like a lot of staff, yes, they have so much to do, and we constantly hear that, right? Like another thing, another meeting, another
Yeah,
whatever. But none of them center them. That's what's
absolutely.
different, like, right? So it's like, yes, but I also think people will really value the knowledge, like the information, and give themselves a chance to be like I always used to say, doing restorative justice work, a lot of circle keeping, a lot of that within the prison system. And like I would tell officers, like, just try.
Hmm.
Like every time that you just feel something, you can ask for a circle. I'm not saying that everything is going to change overnight. I'm just saying, can one day you wake up and know there's another option for you? Harm reduction at its finest. And it's like, I'm not telling you how to do this. Just if it comes across your mind, now you know. And so like that I think is the biggest thing is like not making everything so mandatory, but instead making things more
Yes,
accessible to people. So people feel like, okay, this is actually someone that's in my corner, not someone that's watching me,
I
surveilling
agree.
me, you know? Yeah.
Because even though we have good intentions with this, if we're also making force feeding this into people and making this a part of something, if we're giving it that same light, we're no different than anything else.
Yeah.
It's just a different flavor. It's still
Exactly.
ice cream. It's just
Exactly.
this is the flavor of the day. You're still
Yeah.
getting ice cream, okay? Like that's the way that I see it, and that is also a great perspective to add into it. I can only hope. And I can only hope through conversations like this where we take the stigma out of tarot being something that is, I feel that it's become so privileged to be around, to experience, and even
Yeah.
going back to the history of tarot being something that you used to have to be initiated into prior to gain the
Yeah.
knowledge. And now we're in this age where there's a tarot deck for just about, there's a cat tarot deck, there's a tarot
Yeah.
deck with people who look like me, there's a tarot deck with Hindu gods and goddesses on them and all of that. Like there is a reason why we are shifting into this dynamic of making this practice so accessible. These
Exactly.
archetypes are nothing new, nothing new. And if we can take those gems and that make it accessible in a way where we can open ourselves up to just study it, to know it, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah. No,
Even
I
under
agree.
the umbrella of an institution and a system, if you can change your perspective and the way you view yourself in that piece,
Yeah.
the rest takes care of
Exactly.
itself.
And I had a student that was incarcerated who he used to always tell me, he was like, we complain so much about the system, right? Like, yes. But he's like, I've learned that you can't complain so much about the system and also still be a part of the system, right? So he was like,
Hmm.
he had made some mistakes in his life that have resulted in his incarceration. And he's like, while I like to just, shit on what we didn't have, it's also just like I also didn't take very many steps to make sure I did not end up here. So, what personal responsibility do I actually have in this space? And I think that's the point. Like, and I think at this point in what American history and just our culture is like, we know the system. If you asked majority of people, like at least in carceral spaces, in military spaces, in a lot of places, like, do you think the system is good? A lot of people will be like, we know it's not, but like it is what it is. Like we're doing the best that we can. So I
Absolutely.
think, yeah, that's always something I reflect on in my work.
I love that. I love that. Full
Yeah.
circle for sure. Any last minute thoughts? Is there anything that you would like for the general public to know about the incarcerated, about this practice in general,
Yeah.
and where the two meet?
Yeah, I think it's just like stop waiting for permission. That's my biggest thing, right? Like you have permission to exist however that you want to exist. And I think in terms of incarceration, my biggest message is like the saviorism and the pityism. Like it just has to exit the conversation, right?
Mm,
Like I remember doing a prison writing workshop where we wrote letters upstate and folks would come to me and be like, I don't know what to say. And I've been noticing a lot of these spaces are very much like, we love you, we're sorry, but it's like they're sending me like letters and they're asking about AI. Like they want to know what's going on here. They want to know what's happening in
yeah.
Brooklyn. They're real people. So I think just like focusing on like the humanity is the language that all of us speak, right? And these are just different tools. And like I always say, what else is possible? What else is possible? Just be open because you can try something once and be like, that was not for me. Well, at least you
Hmm.
tried it. But a lot of times we have fear, we're scared, we don't know what to do. And I think my biggest thing and why I love working with this population of people is like at its core, it's like we're all just the same. Some of
Hmm.
us got a little bit better luck than others. Some of us were more impacted by a system than others. But at the end of the day, we're all just people. We're all just trying to make it. Sometimes I feel like I've met incarcerated people that are more free than people in the free world.
Mm.
And I've met people in the free world that feel incarcerated in their own brain. So it's like, it's all just a simulation. Like, we're all just people and just allow yourself to be human. I feel like that's the core message. Yeah.
That's a beautiful note to end it with. But before we
Yeah.
go, I have to do a little end on a high
Mhm.
note.
Yeah.
And we're going to do this thing I'm calling a tarot tea segment. So I'm going to ask you five questions.
Okay.
And off the top of your head, answer freely. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Your favorite tarot deck.
Okay. Mars. I favorite tarot deck or the tarot deck I use the most. I use Marseille tarot deck the
Hmm.
most because it's more rooted in like almost I feel like colonialism a little bit, and I feel like I like coming from that perspective with my ancestry, so I can really speak for all, and I'm not secluded on a specific group. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Favorite card of the major arcana.
The High Priestess for
Ooh,
sure. Yes, I. It's like the card that has followed me through my life. Like, girl, step in your power. Who do you think? What's going on? Yeah.
I love that. Okay. For the minor arcana, what's your favorite card?
Probably the Ten of Cups. I just love things working out. Like let's have more things working out for us. Yeah.
Very positive card for sure. Okay. Your favorite court card.
Probably the Queen of Cups. So around the similar themes, as you can tell. I think for me, especially with tarot, it's like you look for certain cards, right? You're like, I want the answer to be positive. I want the answer to be positive. So when cards like the High Priestess, the Ten of Cups, like the Queen of Cups, like when they all come up, you're like, yes. You're like, yeah, this is good. I'm doing good. Yeah.
Remember who you are. This is who you
Exactly.
are. I love that. The biggest lesson that tarot has taught you.
Then I'm in control of my own story, right? Like other people like to tell us about ourselves. We know ourselves best. If you haven't lived my life, you can't tell me about myself. So it's just
Mm.
like grounding myself and anchoring myself into that. Yeah.
I don't have
Yeah.
nothing else after that. This was
Yeah.
such a beautiful, enlightening, and informative conversation, not just around tarot and the spiritual practice, but also shedding light on the people who are actually on the front lines and in the midst of the population, the incarcerated population that unfortunately are comprised of a lot of people who look like us. And
Yeah.
so it's so important. I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to have this conversation to also remember them in this way and to not always make it about the doom and gloom and the worst of them, but also in giving them light and
Yeah.
allowing themselves to still be the root of who they are, regardless of their circumstances. So I love that.
Yeah.
Before we go, where can we find you?
Yes, my business is called Rooted in the Work, ROOTED in the Work. And that's my handle on rootedinthework.com, Instagram, TikTok, everything. YouTube, you can find me on all of those. So just for context, we are a consulting company. So we do training and development and fundraising strategy for folks. And we take the excess money and we funnel it into a foundation to support those impacted by harm, essentially. Creating more information, imagination, and power in their worlds. So that's where you can find me. That's what we're about. And yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I'm
Yes,
so
thank you so
happy.
much for
Thank you
having
so much for
me.
doing this.
Yes.